Hey everybody, this is Duchess coming to you with a very quick tutorial. I am planning to make myself a dress with Mccalls 6886. Mccalls 6886 is a very popular pattern as it is the foundation for basically any dress. Let me see if I can get that in focus. Any dress, whether it's any fitted dress, knee length, bodycon dress, midi, maxi. So because you can of course add length to it or shorten it. So I am wondering if I'm going to be able to pull off my dress with these shoes that I got from Shoe Dazzle. So the dress again is a basic dress, and I think that I want to add a bow around the neck. So we'll see. I may change my mind. So I wanted to do look D, which is kind of a scoop neck dress. The hem for look D comes at about 41 inches. However, that's where I want my dress to stop. So the hem is 1 1/4 inch, and I'm going to have to add that 1 1/4 inch onto the bottom of the pattern pieces so that my dress can stop exactly where the pattern ends. So the instructions call for you to lay your fabric. Hopefully this is clear. Lay your fabric. Fold your fabric. Basically, the folds are actually supposed to be kissing, but because I selected size 12, because it seems like my dresses, my knit dresses have been looking kind of frumpy on me because I haven't been choosing the correct pattern size here lately. So I guess I'm actually smaller than what I give myself credit for. At any rate, those are actually supposed to be kissing, but because, you know, if you use a larger size pattern piece, of course you're going to bring them in, bring these edges in closer to the center. So this is pattern on the left is pattern piece 3, which is the front, and on the back is pattern piece 2, which is the back. Now this back goes for all of the different looks that are in the are on the front of the pattern envelope. So that's why it's actually longer than the pattern piece on the left. As far as pattern pieces, I don't cut my patterns. I trace the patterns and then I put them in an envelope. I'll show you that another day. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but my fabric is an ITY knit, I believe. So the next thing that I wanted to address is if you do decide to trace your pattern pieces like I did, make sure you transfer all markings, even on your fabric, when it's time for you to cut your fabric. Make sure you transfer all markings. Now what I mean by all markings is, let me see, move my camera, is, for instance, this is a dot right here that you would need to transfer. Of course, you would cut all of your notches as shown here. Another thing too is to transfer these triangles. Now these triangles are basically for you to match up your shoulder seams. It's a guide to help you match up your shoulder seams. This is on both sides, both the front and the back of the pattern. So again, you would match up those when it's time for you to sew. Now once you cut your fabric, which I'm not going to be able to do on camera, I'm sure, you would need to trace those. Now, in order to trace those onto your fabric, you would use tracing paper. Now, here's my tracing paper. I chose this dark blue tracing paper because it will show onto my fabric. You see that? There's a triangle that I traced previously. So, but you would transfer that once you actually cut out your fabric. I just traced it right there so that I could show you all. So I have the washers, of course, so that it will hold down my pattern as I'm cutting. Now, use my rotary cutter, which I don't think that I'm going to be able to do a good job of cutting on camera, but it gets the job done. My edges are very clean. When I cut. So, as you can see, that's what my rotary cutter does. This is my best friend. I probably should purchase more. So, okay, so I'm back. Now, what I have is my sewing gauge, which you can move this purple thing back and forth to select your select the measurement. So I already have it set to 1 1/4 inches, and I have my paperweight there to hold it while I'm trying to record and add length to this hem. So I have my chalk roller, and basically, hopefully you can see that. You can see this previous one that I did. So you would just move it over like every couple of inches or so, half inch, and then just lightly draw that measurement on there. So again, I'm going to cut on the blue line because my hem is going to actually end up being here because that's the length that I would like my dress to be. So that's how you use the sewing gauge to add length. And of course, again, this works for doing your hems. And okay, so I'm coming back to you all after I have traced my new trace out my new hemline, which will be this blue line right here. You see that? My new hemline. That blue line right there. So again, of course I'm not going to cut on this line any longer because that's not where that's not my hemline. That's not what I want. I am going to cut on this line, and you have to press hard when you use these rotary cutters. It gets the job done, but you have to press hard. So that will be the new hemline, and then cut up and cut around your pattern piece. I have my front piece and my back piece with right sides together, which is here, and of course this is the wrong side. So before we take the pattern pieces to sew, we need to pin the pattern pieces. So the first thing we need to do is match up the notches. Now we cut the notches on the side and on the shoulder, so we need to match the notches on both sides, and both sides of the dress, and then on the shoulders. Now I'm going to pin on the opposite side because when I sew, I'm going to sew from the bottom hem up to under the arm on both sides. So the first thing you do is pin your notches, and then you pin the edges of your shoulder seam. Then you're going to pin the edges of the bottom hem, and we're doing that so that we can make sure that the bottom hem pieces match. Okay, and then you can pin all along here for better control while you're sewing. I'm going to pin one side of the shoulder seams as well. Hopefully my camera is in focus and you all can see. Okay, so remember those triangles that we made earlier for the shoulder seams? We're going to match the notches and make sure that the triangles match. Usually I do all of my pinning at the sewing machine. Okay, so here is how you can tell if your triangles match. I'm going to stick a pin through, and the pin goes through both sides of the triangle, so that will tell you that show you rather that everything is matched. And I'm going to pin this on the opposite side because again I'm going to sew from the neck to the outside. Okay, I'm back. So before I actually start sewing, let's talk about tools for better sewing. First off, you can use a walking foot. It's not mandatory, but it helps a lot. A walking foot, basically the foot is plastic and metal, unlike the standard J foot that's just all metal. But basically this literally walks the fabric through the sewing machine and it makes it easier. Now, a necessity, absolute necessity when sewing with knit fabric is to use the proper needle. You must use a proper needle. So you need a ballpoint needle. Right now I believe that I'm sewing with just a ballpoint needle. The ballpoint needle is different from a standard needle because this ballpoint needle actually stabs through in between the fabric. The jersey ballpoint needle is definitely better than the standard ballpoint needle because jersey, you're sewing with jersey or knit, and then the ballpoint does what I just explained to you. Okay. Another thing that will help you is when you're starting your seams to use a thin piece of paper. Now, like a tissue paper or something like that. I tore off a piece of brown paper bag from some fast food that I had. So I put that under here and to help me while I'm sewing. Also, you can either use a zigzag stitch or stretch zigzag stitch. It should be a zigzag stitch is on all machines. Stretch zigzag machine is on certain machines. So I'm using a stretch zigzag, which is kind of slanted. The zigzag is usually straight like this, but the stretch zigzag is kind of slanted. So we're going to use 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to sew all the way down. Now again, I'm starting from the bottom hem and working my way down to the underarm seam. Okay. So, and make sure to remove your pins when you're sewing. Now, what I want to show you all real quick is, you see how I've sewn the brown paper bag. All you do is tear it off when you're done. So it's not anything, anything serious. Just tear it off, and then you can use it at the bottom as well when you're done, when you're almost at the bottom of the underarm seam. So that's it. I'm going to finish sewing this and I'll come back to you. Okay, I am back. I sewed down one side of my side, of the dress. So I use a zigzag stitch and I sewed from the bottom of the hem to under the arm. And what a zigzag stitch does is when you put on your clothes, your stitches will not pop because there's a stretch zigzag stitch. Now what I'm going to do is to make this look neater with my serger. Usually when you serge, your serger thread should match the same thread that you use to sew on your sewing machine. As of right now, I have black thread in my serger. I do not feel like taking the thread out. I mean, I love my serger. Taking the thread out is just, changing the thread is just too much. So I definitely need to invest in a second serger. This one, by the way, I bought this used from eBay, and I've had it for a few years. It's done me very well. So anyway, I'm going to finish this with the serger. Finish off the side seam with the serger. Okay. So as you can see, my side seam has been serged. It's locked in. Now I cut off the very edge. There's a razor attached to, a knife attached to the serger, and it cuts off the side of the, it can cut some. This is an older serger, so you cannot remove the blade or the blade. You cannot remove that. So you can move your fabric over so that it won't cut the thread. But I cut off very little fabric. I cut off very little fabric, and this is what I ended up with. Okay, so real quick, I want to show you how to prepare your hems for sewing. So my bottom hem called for 1 1/4 inches, a 1 1/4 inch hem. So I set my sewing gauge on a 1 1/4 inch mark, and then you just measure. You measure with the seam gauge, and you need to, and press. So I like to hit my fabric with a little bit of steam to keep my fabric in place, because this fabric is an ITY knit. So it's kind of like slippery a little bit. So my plan is to sew this with my cover stitch machine. So that's why I'm pinning this, and I'm pinning it using a lot of pins, because my cover stitch machine, the least bit of movement with your fabric and your hem is not going to be neat. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is pin on the right side, because with your cover stitch machine you have to sew on the right side, not on the wrong side like how you would sew with your regular sewing machine. So I thought that I would just come to you and show you all how I prepare my hem for my cover stitch machine. Okay, so I'm here in my cover stitch machine, and basically the difference between the cover stitch machine as far as your seam allowance lines, these are not marked with any inches. It's just lines. Whereas on your sewing machine is marked with a 1/4 inch line, 1/2 inch line, 5/8 of an inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, and this isn't marked with anything. So you just look at the lines, and that's how you know how to continue to have a straight line when you're sewing your hem. So with the cover stitch machine, it's the same, basically the same idea as using your sewing machine, except for it has 2 needles just like the serger. I'm going to show you how the hem looks on the opposite side once I'm done. Oh, and also has 4 threads just like the serger. So I'm going to go very slow, because I'm definitely not a pro at using my cover stitch machine, but I did want to show you all an option that you have. So I'm going to keep my fabric on the thick line for seam allowance. Remove your pin. Unlike me. I am back. So I finished my bottom hem of my dress, and again I used my cover stitch machine. As you can see, the stitches in the hem are straight. So I did a very good job. I'm very proud of myself using my cover stitch machine, because I've probably used that machine less than 10 times, and I've had it for probably a year or two. I don't know, probably a year maybe. At any rate, and this is how it looks on the opposite side. Now most knits, you have some knits that will fray. Like I don't like to sew with interlock or jet set knit, I believe they're called. But this knit will not fray, so that's why I sewed so far away from the hem. I still have the hem, the 1 1/4 inch hem turned over, as you can see on the back. It's just that because I use a cover stitch machine, I didn't sew close to the edge, which you can if if you are more advanced at using your cover stitch machine than I am. So again, I just wanted to come and show you all the the ending result of me using my cover stitch machine for my bottom hem of my dress. So that's it. I will come back and show you all the dress once I'm finished sewing the shoulder seams, and yeah, I'll just show you how I style it. And here is my finished look. As you can see, I decided not to pair this dress with those shoe dazzle shoes that I showed you earlier. To get a closer look at the shoes that I did choose, you can go to my previous shoe haul video. And yes, I do have on my body shaper, which is also a previous video. And I'm showing you how, if I tied the bow up a little tighter, how it would look. And you can make the bow as long or as short as you'd like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.